Let's talk about Boris Johnson's journey. And we'll get to the EU in just a moment because that's something he's got to navigate. But he also wants to do a trade deal with the United States. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo weighed in on that this week. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Sure, it'll be complicated, and there'll be places that'll be very contentious. Both negotiating teams will want to preserve things for their own country. That's how negotiations work. Look, we're committed to working on this as quickly as we can. I don't want to put a timeline on it. It'll take a little bit, but I hope by the end of this year or the late summer, early fall, we have a substantial piece of progress.
Yeah, that's a bit of Pollyanna, isn't it? I mean, these things take a while to negotiate. Right now, Trump's got all the cards, doesn't he? I mean,
well, Trump certainly does, but we're on different time cycles from the British right now. We have an election year, and Donald Trump didn't run on a pro-trade agenda, but now he's going to start pitching a new trade agreement. That's very difficult. So the groundwork can be laid in negotiations, but the thing to remember about the UK is that it's not just negotiating with the US. There's also a European Union component to this. And if the European Union is not part of it, Democrats on the Hill are going to be very concerned. So there's a multi-layered negotiation here, and the politics are not ripe right now.
Speaking of the House, the Speaker of the House already came out this week saying, you know, if Brexit has anything to do with the Good Friday Agreement, and there are questions about Ireland, talk to me about how fraught that situation is up on the Hill.
Yeah, Mike, really, that Good Friday Agreement component to this is central. The United States, we helped negotiate the end to the troubles in Northern Ireland. We're bought into it. We have a large American constituency that is of Irish-American descent, that is really committed to peace in Northern Ireland. So anything that unwinds that is very concerning. And so there's concern on the Hill that a trade agreement between the U.S. and the UK is one thing, but the EU and the UK, they need to make sure that they're maintaining that agreement. And the Irish have a different view from the English and the British right now on their future. And so these are multiple variables, and here in the United States, there's not a lot of appetite for moving forward with an agreement unless it's rock solid that Good Friday Agreement stays in place.
Well, speaking of appetites, my daughter teaches at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. They had a vote whether they would break away from the UK, and one of the reasons why they stayed was because they were in the European Union. They're not very happy about this, so he's got to deal with that as well.
Yeah, the dissonance here where Boris Johnson wants his independence and he's going to get it, but if Scotland wants its independence, it can't get it, is going to be a difficult thorn in his side, and it's going to continue. So, yes, tomorrow is day one of a new reality for Britain, but not at all are these issues resolved, and certainly the Scottish aren't just going to sit around and be quiet now as Boris Johnson tries to navigate a way forward for them.
Speaking of sitting around and not being quiet, the European Union have been they would probably say if you were to sit and talk to them and they would be honest, they've been kind of jerked around in the process during this whole 3.5-year period, not really all that happy about it. So now they've got to negotiate a deal with them, and in many respects, the European Union's got all the cards, right?
Well, the European Union does have a lot of the cards, and certainly they can yank Britain's chain if they want to. But the British, they're going to try to find partners, and this is where Donald Trump and the U.S. comes in, is that if they feel that they can come to the U.S. and the U.S. offers a strong deal, then that could move the Europeans a little more towards where the British want to go. But it's a triangular negotiation, and it's very hard in an election year in the U.S. to commit, so it's going to be very hard for Boris Johnson to negotiate. And in addition to that, there are concerns about British capacity to negotiate both to their east and to their west. But nonetheless, he's going to have to navigate that if he's going to have a sustainable deal.
Well, speaking of the east, I mean, he wants to be in safe ports. He wants the United States, but he also still wants that relationship with China. Huawei, a prime example of kind of being caught in the middle because the U.S. doesn't want him doing business with Huawei. China does. How does he navigate all of that?
Lots of potential pitfalls, both with China as well as with Iran. And on Iran, Boris Johnson said that he would support President Trump's position. Earlier, he did not. He has a lot of these geopolitical issues that he has to navigate if he wants to get deals. I was thinking nuclear deal, but of course, in this case, the trade deal. But if he wants to get these deals with the U.S., he's going to have to navigate that. And with China, I do think it's going to cause him more heartburn on Capitol Hill in particular.
You would not want to work under him at this stage.
A lot of
That's
heartburn.
a tough job. Thanks so much, Joel. Really appreciate it.